right, let's go ahead and get started. This is Emily Jopkin at the National Head Start Association. I'm delighted to be joined today by a great group of folks to talk about getting a 2-gen program off the ground. And just a little aside before we get started, you'll see these families there on your screen. All of them are, in fact, Head Start families who were featured in our photo exhibit last year, the Lost Opportunities photo exhibit. If you'll be at the annual conference in a few weeks, you'll get a chance to see it again. We've got here a teen father who was in a program in Kentucky and 2 families from Baltimore City where the mother in the center is in a nursing program and the other mother is working. So just a nice little testament to some of the families that you all know. So for those of you who have not met me, and I think many of you probably have, I'm Emily Jopkin. I'm the Director of Policy, Data, and Research here at NHSA. I'll introduce all of these folks to you as we go through, but you'll see them there. Just to give you a little introduction to what we're talking about today and also to the technology involved, you'll see on the right side of your screen a question box, as well as some chat options and a raise your hand option if you'd like to comment or ask a question at the end. If you can hear me right now, would you go ahead and type something like, yes, we can hear you in the questions box? And hit send. Wonderful. All right. Everybody can hear you, can hear me. So what we'll be talking about today is first the 2 Generations Together effort that NHSA has been undertaking this year. You'll hear from Ascend at the Aspen Institute, who have been our partners in this work. And then from 2 of the programs that have stood out and were highlighted in our report that came out at the end of January, Educational Alliance from New York City and Parents and Community Action, Inc. from Minnesota, from Minneapolis, who have very different experiences to share, but who've done some really impressive 2-generation work. Finally, we'll talk about some of the other ways you can stay involved. Today is actually the kickoff for our webinar series, which will be going on over the next 2 months, really. So lots of opportunities to be involved and to really build a conversation with us and with each other among those of you who are interested in this topic. And finally, we'll have some opportunities for questions at the end. And really want to encourage you to ask questions. We know all of your communities are different, but many of our families have similar needs or similar experiences in different communities, and want this to be a really effective way to learn from what these programs have done and also what you've done in your own local work. So just a little bit to introduce us, I want to share with you, I think that first paragraph, which is the vision and mission of NHSA, all of you are probably familiar with. But we've also, you'll see actually on Monday, you'll see our brand new NHSA website, which really organizes our content in a new way for the first time. And you'll see the Center for Policy, Data, and Research called out clearly. And so I want to share with you a little bit about what we're doing through that effort. And so it's our sort of vision and mission for that say, a strong and sustainable future for Head Start will mean the success of generations of children who might otherwise struggle throughout their lives. Their future success rests on the knowledge, commitment, and collaboration of families, programs, researchers, and policymakers. And to that end, the 3 big components of what we want to do in CPDR is to curate knowledge about Head Start, to support programs as leaders, and to share their wisdom and experience widely, to generate new analyses and reflections on program and policy priorities, and to strengthen dialogue and collaboration between Head Start practitioners and researchers. And we really see ways of doing all 3 of those things through our 2-generation effort. And today really is about that first piece, about knowing that all of you in your local communities have done impressive things and nuanced things and efforts that are really focused on who the people are that you're serving and what the resources are in your community. And all of those practices are sometimes hidden by the fact that there aren't as many forums as there should be to highlight local practices and to share them with other programs across the country. So we're really excited for this to be a platform for some of that conversation as well. So if you have not heard of it, I would be surprised, but our Two Generations Together effort has been going on since last April. It began with an application process and an effort to gather examples from across the field. And 6 of those programs were ultimately selected for our Two Generations Together case studies from Head Start report. That was released in January. On the same day that we released it, we held a Two Generations Together Institute here in DC, which included presentations from the programs and also from national leaders and researchers on these issues. All of those sessions are now available to watch on YouTube or on the webpage on our new website next week. And we really do see this as a conversation that has to continue. Any of you who've done professional development know that having something once is usually not the most effective way of sharing information. And so we'll be having 6 webinars over the next 2 months, and we'll also have a learning network going on, which if you haven't been on one of our learning networks before, usually involves a very active listserv, as well as other webinars and opportunities. Before we move on, to help our presenters get a sense of who you are and what you're interested in, we have a few polls that we're going to do. This will also help you all understand who your co-audience members are. And so our first question asks, what are the most pressing family needs in your community? And you can choose more than one if you'd like. So if you go ahead, you should be able to click that on your screen and make your choices. All right. And I'm going to go ahead and close that, and you should be able to see the results now. So interestingly, all of these 5 came out as being significant issues. More than half of you chose each of them. Parental education or job skills is the leading most pressing need, but really all of these play a role, sometimes for the same families and sometimes for different families. Our next poll asks you, what types of Two Generations focuses would you like to build for families for next year? So thinking about, this is getting close enough into the spring that you're starting to plan for enrollment for the fall, what are the particular efforts that you're thinking about trying to build or develop further? All right. So interestingly, we've got the pre-college skills really leading as something that you feel your families need, that those sort of things that will get people college ready, having the language skills, having the GED or a similar degree. We do see close to 20% of you saying you want to focus on helping parents to earn college credits, 54% getting job training for high-needs jobs, an equal number accessing stable and safe housing, food, and health care, each of which could have been their own lines if the system would let me put in more than 5. And then finally, that asset building and savings. And you'll see that we have webinars related to really all of these topics over the course of the webinar series. One final poll to help us. What do you hope to get out of the Learning Network and webinars? And you can select more than one. All right. Great. Thanks to 90% of you for voting. That's unusually high. And so really interesting here to see that about half of you are working from scratch on this, and the other half of you are trying to enhance efforts that are already underway. Also great to see that close to 90% are looking for concrete tools and suggestions. That's definitely something that we can focus on as we move forward in this series, as well as a majority looking for sort of the broader abstract ideas about how do we form a plan for 2Gen. And only a quarter of you want to share your successes. I'm sure that there are more than that out there. Don't be shy. Great. All right. So moving on, just a quick word on this, and then I'll turn us over to our partners at Ascend. A few comments about what we mean when we say 2Gen, because sometimes you say 2 generations and people think you mean children going to Head Start and then their children going to Head Start, which of course is not actually the goal. But what we mean when we say 2Gen is this idea that's always been part of the Head Start program, which is that you're focusing on the parents and the children at the same time, that you've got key leadership roles for parents and this focus on whole families. But there has been variation in the intensity and the design of those efforts for parents to go beyond parenting skills and leadership and actually to job training and education. And so that's one element of what we talk about with 2Gen and helping programs enhance their work. A couple of the other broader picture components to this are really thinking about how do we use the 2-generation language in local communities where a lot of you are seeing a whole wide range of options for the families of 3- and 4-year-olds now that maybe also have significant education components, but really don't have this kind of focus on the family supports for high-risk families. And so 2Gen can really be a language that helps us talk about the fact that we're doing a lot more than just child care or education, and explain that in communities. And then the final point, of course, is that we know that Head Start reauthorization is approaching in the next year or two. And as we have that conversation and think about what are the most important elements and outcomes that are part of our mission as a program, this language can help us with some of the family components. I'm showing this to you not because I don't think you've seen it, but just because it does reflect that parent engagement and families as advocates and leaders in all of this really is essential to Head Start and has always been part of how we frame our work. Just a few numbers before we move on. I'll let you glance over those. Those are from the PIR, showing that really across the country we do have huge numbers of families coming through our doors every year with opportunities to really achieve greater stability and self-sufficiency. And this just represents a handful that have accessed different services through their Head Start and Early Head Start program. And with that, I'm delighted to introduce to you Rachel Pollack. She is a policy analyst with Ascend at the Aspen Institute. She previously spent 8 years at the Office of Management and Budget, where she coordinated the President's legislative agenda on a range of domestic policy issues relating to early childhood education, housing, employment pathways, and economic security. In 2013, she was selected to participate in the President's Management Council program, during which time she worked with the White House, the Department of Labor, and the Center for American Progress to develop the Obama administration's policy strategy for the White House Summit on Working Families. She's previously held a range of positions with senators, committees, and so on, and we're delighted to have her be part of this conversation with the Aspen Institute. Rachel?
Thank you so much, Emily. I assume everyone can hear me.
I
am excellent. Then we're good. I am delighted to participate in today's webinar on 2-generation approaches and to partner with the National Head Start Association in this series of webinars on the 2-generation Together Institute. We are thrilled by the programs that you've been able to identify and by this continuing work. For some of you who may not be familiar about Ascend at the Aspen Institute, I wanted to share a little bit of information about who we are and what we do and how we are working to promote a two-generation approach across the country. So Emily, if you could move on to my first slide. Ascend at the Aspen Institute is a national hub for breakthrough ideas and collaborations that move vulnerable children and their parents towards educational success and economic security. We were created as part of the Aspen Institute to identify and elevate solutions that shift mindsets, behaviors, practices, and policies to address what has been a seemingly intractable challenge, the intergenerational cycle of poverty in the United States. We accomplished this through three main prongs of work. The first is building a network of two-generation practitioners, which includes National Head Start Association and a couple of the 6 Head Start-based programs that the National Head Start Association is highlighting in their work, including our co-panelists today, Lynn Applebaum and the Educational Alliance in New York, which we're very excited to support. The network spans 58 organizations in 24 states and the District of Columbia. The second prong of our work is a fellowship program that develops two-generation leaders. Ascend just announced our 2015 cohort of fellows, which we're very excited about. And finally, the work that we do identifies innovations and opportunities for two-generation best and next practices and policies. And Emily, if you could move to our next slide. Our work takes a look at two-generation programs across the continuum. There are many programs that are just child-focused in the United States and many that are just parent-focused. What we try and do is focus on programs who are meeting in the middle and who are really working to provide opportunities to parents and their children together. In terms of how we identify high-quality programs, we're looking for programs that incorporate 6 principles into their two-generation work. Those include measuring and accounting for outcomes for both children and their parents, programs that engage and listen to the voices of families as they set their policies, programs that foster innovation and evidence together, programs that align and link systems and funding streams and look to creative sources of funding in order to promote their goals, programs that prioritize intentional implementation, and finally, programs that ensure equity. We are very committed to making sure that we're looking at our work through a racial and gender equity lens. We are excited about some polling information that we collected last fall through a bipartisan poll that frankly is a bit unbelievable when you look at the results. More than 71% of adults, like I said, Democrats and Republicans together, more than 71% said that they needed to see two-generation programs in order to ensure that low-income children have success. 84% of those polled said that Head Start programs should partner with organizations that help parents of low-income children further their education and job training. So the political will for two-generation approaches is out there, and we are trying to harness that as well as the energy of our partners and push forward a two-generation policy agenda that will promote these practices on a nationwide scale. Emily, if you could just move on to my final slide. This kind of gives a very clear vision of how Ascend and our two-generation programs work. As you can see, the different cogs in the wheel of a two-generation program coming together to provide social capital, which is really the peer-to-peer learning networks, the health and well-being aspect, including mental health, economic supports, which can include helping families build assets and providing access to safe and stable housing, and then, of course, the big prongs for both children and parents to get on the path to economic achievement and educational success. So that is the basics of Ascend at the Aspen Institute and how we are moving our work forward. We are delighted to participate in this program with the National Head Start Association because Head Start is really the original two-generation program, as Emily mentioned in her opening remarks. Head Start is doing some wonderful, innovative things, but we think that this country is ready for bold change in the field of early childhood education, and we are excited to hear from some of our Head Start partners about how we can move that change forward. And I'm very excited to hear from both Gretchen and Lynn about what they're up to in their programs, and I think I'll leave it at there.
Great, thank you so much for joining us. And so with that, we're going to move on to the Educational Alliance. And I'm pleased to introduce Lynn Applebaum, who is Educational Alliance's Chief Program Officer. She has the overall responsibility for developing, overseeing, and enhancing quality programs, cultivating and promoting program integration and collaboration, and assessing and strengthening policies, operations, and organizational structure. She's got a long history of doing work in family justice with a local community or a local settlement house in New York City, and a wide range of partnerships to help people develop the skills to enhance their lives and their communities. And Lynn, is Karen with you as well? Lynn, I can't hear you. You may be on mute. Lynn? Hello? All right. Lynn, can you hear us now? It looks like your phone is hooked up properly, but we're not hearing you. All right. Okay, she says she's talking and can't be heard. Well, why don't you hang up and call back in, and we'll have Gretchen speak, and then we'll jump back to your program. Gretchen, does that sound all right?
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
All right. So let me
skip to my
skip
slide
ahead and read your introduction instead. So starting with Parents in Community Action, we have Gretchen Hengelmo, who is herself a former Head Start parent, who began her journey with Head Start over 40 years ago as a volunteer at Parents in Community Action in Hennepin County, Minnesota. She first earned her Child Development Associate credential through PICA and has since been employed by the agency for 42 years in a variety of positions throughout early childhood. She's currently a senior advisor at PICA, lending her expertise and knowledge of PICA and Head Start history to all agency component areas. Gretchen.
Good afternoon. You can go to the next slide, please.
There you go.
Our training program's mission is for parents to have a better understanding of child development and appropriate expectations for their children, and to help parents develop interpersonal skills so they can succeed in life, both with their schools and in jobs, and to enhance their advocacy skills so they can take what they learn here at PICA on to their child's next school experience, and to provide opportunities for them to explore some jobs that they may not have had access to previously, and to prepare them for employment within the agency and the community at large. So PICA piloted the parent training program back in 1980. We had parents that were coming in to volunteer in the classroom, and they sometimes didn't feel comfortable in the classroom, as well as the teachers didn't know how to direct them in what they could do to be of assistance in the classroom. So we wanted to formalize that experience, and so we piloted the program with 8 parents, and it was based basically on local employment needs. There was a need for early childhood teachers out in the field then, and still is, and with focus group response and evaluation, we decided to develop some other training projects for the parents. So we offer 5 96-hour, 2-month parent training projects, one in infant toddler classrooms, in the preschool classroom, and for parents to get experience with clerical skills and working a front desk and greeting clients. And our transportation, we have a high need for drivers here in Minnesota, so we developed a transportation training program to help parents get their CDL driver's license in order to provide transportation either on a school bus or a PICA bus, and also a food service program. Next. And it has multiple benefits. The benefits to parents is that they gain a better understanding of individual growth and development for their children so that they know what is the reasonable expectation. Parents always have a higher expectation for their own child than they may for another child, and when they see children in that group setting, they are more realistic in the expectations. And to broaden their knowledge of emerging literacy skills. And sometimes this is the first opportunity for parents to experience a job, so they learn valuable entry-level job skills. You know, how to be to work on time, what kind of clothes you need to wear to work, what the expectation is in when you have doctor's appointments for your children and yourself, and still meet the needs of what the employer needs. And they learn about different career fields. It's been interesting to watch. There have been people that thought they wanted to be an early childhood teacher, and after experiencing the program, they've decided that's not what they want to do in life, and they want to try some of the other career fields. And they're involved in learning the development process of their children. They see their kids in a different light after they've been involved in the program. And I think the carrot has always been they receive a certificate of completion as well as a small stipend expense that isn't considered income because it's a stipend, a reimbursement for what they may need to do in order to complete the program successfully, you know, pay for child care after school for their other kids, maybe even get a pair of tennis shoes in order to be able to dress appropriately for work. Next. Next. And there's benefits to the child. It gives the child a sense of pride that their parents are involved in their school. And children can better relate to parents who are reflective of the student population. Here in Minnesota, we have a very diverse population. Right now we have the largest Somali community in the United States, as well as we're seeing more Spanish-speaking families coming to PICA. But back then, we had a lot of Native American children, African American children, and Hmong children. And I like to tell the story about a classroom that was in the Native American community, and those kids were screened, and we were told that 80% of them lacked in language skills. And there was a Native father that participated in the first training project, and when he left, all the children had increased their language skills, partly because there was somebody that looked like them in the classroom that they could respond to in a positive way. And the other way it benefits the child is it decreases the adult-child ratio. There are more adults in there that they can work one-on-one and in smaller groups with children. Next. The benefits to PICA. It provides PICA with an extra pair of hands in the classroom, and it adds diversity to the classroom. It provides PICA with a pool of potential staff that are racially and economically reflective of the children and families we serve. It's PICA's philosophy that we want to have staff that look like the children and talk like the children so they have a positive role model, and it helps build their sense of self. We're one of the largest trainers of teachers of color in the state of Minnesota. And it gives PICA a home language model as well for the kids so that they can hear their languages in school as well as at home. Next. Continued benefits to PICA is that it also improves the cultural competence of our other PICA staff. We get to learn about each other's cultures and learn the values and ethics of other cultures. It saves PICA money in the long run by utilizing training money already designated in our program budget. And we get additional in-kind services, and it has facilitated our grow your own philosophy. 46% of PICA staff are former Head Start parents. And I put this slide in because it's really been kind of, we heard it in Washington that agencies are losing their teachers to the public schools for their 4-year-old programs. And so it's a, a double-edged sword. We find that we're seeding the community with knowledgeable, qualified, and a diverse workforce. When our teachers leave us or our staff leave us, they're getting the benefit of the training that they've had here at PICA, and we see it as an investment in community growth. Next. And I just wanted to add, one of the key things that's really important is continued evaluation of the program. Through the course of the years, we've evaluated and made improvements and increased what we look at. And we noticed that we needed to provide additional services to families. So we have a team of what we call the cross-cultural team who does additional education for families in ESL, citizenship, and GED and ABE education. And one of the key things for that to be successful is that we provide child care to support families to be able to attend on a consistent basis for the English classes. And we also, from this program, have developed an internship where parents can make an application and be interviewed for an additional 700 hours of experience in the classroom, and then have access to our on-site CDA training so they can get jobs in the early childhood field. And any questions? Yeah. And that's
well, we'll have some questions at the end, but I just want to ask you sort of on behalf of this group, for the folks who really are starting out doing this for the first time, what do you think are the things that they should be most thoughtful about as they do that initial design phase?
Well, I think that you need to, have the focus groups and talk to parents on what they need. Don't assume that what you need is what they need, and in the development to provide to them what they need to be successful. We've been real open about, parents' availability to complete their training program. If there's a certain day of the week that they can't, we adjust the schedule so that they can have the time for their families that they would need. So the 96 hours could be, on a 2-day experience or a 3-day experience, which works for them, whichever works for them best. And then to, always evaluate. We've looked at what we're asking parents to do, and training staff. Staff are the trainers of the trainees. So staff have to have the buy-in. Teachers have to be open to having another person in their classroom to train them in the skills that they may need. And the same with our clerical people or our kitchen people. They need to be open to having parents in their spaces and to teach them what they need to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Great. And we did get one question that came in. I'll ask you now before we turn over to Educational Alliance, saying, after the participant gets their credential and stipend, if they don't become employed at PICA, do you help them find employment? And to what extent does lack of documentation among immigrant families affect their ability to find jobs?
Well, that's an excellent question. We do have parents that go out to other early childhood programs after they leave us because we can only employ so many, and they do get a certificate and an evaluation that they can take with us. In our state licensing, it states that in order to be an aide in the early childhood program, you have to have a minimum of 15 hours of training in child development. So this gives them a tool as a foot in the door to some other child care programs. In addition, I have, and we have sent people to other programs in our state that provide child development associate training, and I will work with parents even after they've left here to help them acquire their CDA by, reviewing their portfolio and giving them feedback in order for them to be successful in that process as well. And immigrants, families, it's the same anywhere. Sometimes they start out and they can start out in our program, But if there comes to be some problems with their paperwork, we have found, especially with our drivers, that they've had to resign because of not being able to keep that CDL license current. And we try to steer them to a place to help them clear up their paperwork and have hired people back when they've gotten their licenses cleared up and fixed.
Great, thank you. All right, Lynn, you want to try talking again?
How about now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. So Karen's here too. I apologize. I don't know what happened. Right. Oh, that.
No, well, we can hear you now. And so just
Okay.
to reiterate, if any of you have forgotten the instructions, Lynn Applebaum is the Chief Program Officer with Educational Alliance, and she's joined by Karen Berry, who is the Vice President of Education, who also has a long history in the field. I'll leave it at that and let you guys get off.
Right. Okay, so thank you, Emily. And what we're going to do today is Karen and I will both answer questions, but we figured in a brief presentation, just one of us talking was enough, and I'm closer to the phone. So thank you very much for this opportunity. We are really proud to be recognized both by the National Head Start Association and by Ascend. We are proud and humbled to be in your orbit. And what I want to do today is tell you very little about Education Alliance, how we came to our two-generation work, a little about what it looks like, and some of our recommendations for if you were to bolster aspects of your Head Start program. So, and as Emily said, the photos you're seeing are all of Education Alliance participants, and we're happy to answer questions about that. So Education Alliance is about 125 years old. We're based on the Lower East Side of the East Village in New York City, which is a very densely populated, very diverse neighborhood. We were founded in 1889 to help Eastern European Jewish immigrants be good American citizens. And that included having a very early kindergarten, one of the first in the United States, as well as doing adult education. We've been in the Head Start business since 1965 and early Head Start since 1992, and are committed to helping everyone in our community, people who live, work, and go to school here, reach the next level of whatever they're looking for. We think of ourselves as a place of opportunity and a community of learners, and we want it to be that when you come to Education Alliance, you find people who make you feel welcome and less isolated. You find an opportunity to learn. You find an opportunity to be a teacher, and you find an opportunity to get help when you need it. So that's the very broad strokes of who we are. The origins of our two-generation programming come from a couple things. One, it comes from a fundamental belief in our DNA that education is the best route out of poverty. If we're about helping families achieve and sustain economic security, that education is going to do that, and education including a college degree, but not necessarily limited to one. And we know that it's possible to change culture and promote a college-bound environment for families. We know that. We knew that before starting the 2G work because we have a teen center that began a college prep program that is now 7 years old, and where 100% of the students in our college prep program got into college, and all but 2 of them are either still in college or are college graduates. And so we saw that change happen and knew we could do that with early Head Start families as well. Rachel talked about the country being ready for a bold change in the field of early childhood education, and we think of our two-generation work as the next incarnation of Head Start. Head Start has always recognized the role of parents as their child's primary educator, and we think with modest and strategic investments, Head Start in the next incarnation can make parents even stronger at helping their children succeed in school through a variety of two-generation approaches, like what's happening in PICA and elsewhere, and for us, through investing in parent education. Because as you see on the screen, we believe that education offers everyone the opportunity to transcend difficult circumstances, pursue higher aspirations that benefit them, their children, and, like Gretchen was saying, their communities. So I think we could, so actually one thing before we go to the next slide. when we were working on our most recent Head Start renewal proposal, we were sort of starkly reminded that the Head Start policy standard, which we generally applaud vigorously for parent education, was a high school diploma or a high school equivalency diploma. And I think we can all agree that if that's the only education a person has, it's going to be much harder for them to be the head of an economically stable family. There's all sorts of research that shows the economic difference between a college degree and not having a college degree. And so that's what motivated us to say, you know what, parents with stronger educations are going to be better able to support their kids' learning. They're going to be better able to get good jobs with benefits and at least a living wage. And we have the ability to be a place where both the child and the parent comes to school. So that's, Emily, if you can go to the next slide, that's really at the core of our work, that our message to families, to pregnant mothers, to families coming to enroll in early Head Start or Head Start, is when you come to Educational Alliance to enroll your child, we're going to be talking to you about your goals for your child and your goals for yourself and learning about your educational background. And our commitment to you, the parent, is that we will stay with you and your child until you each graduate from college. That's our two-generation concept. And because when we make it possible for parents and children to access higher education, we're going to foster a community within the Educational Alliance and in the surrounding community in which families are healthier and more economically stable, and parents are better able to support and encourage the education of their children. So I think we've all seen research about the third grade fade, and we can have a conversation at a different time about what we think about that research. But part of our hypothesis is maybe the fade is correlated with a point in the child's education where it's harder for the parents to help them with their homework because of the parent's educational level, and that's what we're looking to change. So we started that programming, you can go to the next slide, Emily, with a very strong background in early childhood education and strong results in the school readiness goals, using teaching strategies goals, and the trust of families, which I think is a key thing, as Gretchen was talking about, to be, and I expect everybody on this call is the same for the families they work with, to be a place where families feel safe asking for help and talking about what they might need help with. So what we then set out to do is say, okay, we want to add the parent education component to the early childhood experience. We're already doing the early childhood, we're already doing the wraparound social services, we're already doing adult education, family literacy. We need to add adult education, and we need to deepen our mental health component. And we know that you can only be great at so many things. And so we could have said, all right, we'll do the adult education too, but instead we thought about who really does this work well that we could partner with and deliver a higher quality service. For us, that meant reaching out to the City University of New York, and specifically, you see the acronym here, BMCC, is the Borough Manhattan Community College, who has a long history of working with adult learners and is now on site at Educational Alliance, leading ESOL classes at several levels, and working in partnership with our college advisor to work with early Head Start and Head Start parents to think about how to get ready for college. And the parents who are in college are largely going to be MCC or other, they're all at City University of New York, which is almost free, and for these families free for all of them. So that is another key thing to think about as you're thinking about either starting from scratch or deepening the work, is who has the expertise that you're missing, and how can you partner with them to enhance the experience of families. The slide you've got in front of you lays out the basic components of our program. Just to give you some numbers, we have over 600 families in our early Head Start and Head Start. More than half of them are participating in the two-generation programming, and that we think is remarkable. And at this point, we have had 2 Head Start parents graduate from college, and by the end of the semester, we will have 5 parents who have graduated from college. since the inception of the program a little more than 3 years ago. So we're very proud of that, and particularly proud of those families. And the kids are very proud of their parents as well. So a couple other things that we did, we've always thought of this as strategic experimentation. We were trying something new, and we've been very upfront about that. We convened an external task force that included funders and members of our board and experts in evaluation and our partners from Borough Manhattan Community College to inform the program from the start, and they've been invaluable thought partners as we've developed and expanded the program. We knew that we wanted to be able to evaluate the results of this work. So we went to New York University's Steinhardt School and said to them, please help us evaluate it. And they said, well, it's too new to do a real rigorous evaluation, but we'll help you do a formative evaluation, which has been hugely important to us, is to have people who understand what we're trying to do, who have expertise in this field, working with us to make sure that the program model has integrity and that we're doing what we said we were going to do, and that we are able to articulate our theory of change and our logic model, which is just a fancy way, as you all know, of saying this is what we're trying to do and this is how we think we're going to get there. So Emily, you can go to the last slide now. Just thinking about advice, I would say, and we didn't know this going in, but to begin with some sort of formative evaluation, to begin with a partner who can help you think and think from an objective way about what you're setting out to do and what that's going to look like. Plan, and this builds on what Gretchen was saying, for the specific needs of families. We have families who have lived in the United States, in New York, for generations and have high school diplomas and needed some counseling and advice to know how to apply to college. And we have families who have been in the United States for literally days from the Fujian province of China and speak no English. And they're both part of our two-generation programming. We recognize now that for some of the recent Chinese immigrants, it's a long road to a college degree, and that may not be the end goal for that parent. But when that parent is able to speak English, get an on-the-books job, and have a meaningful conversation with their child's teacher, they're going to have a much greater impact on their child's education. So that gets to the third recommendation, which is, balance the short and long-term outcomes. We remain focused on helping parents get college degrees, but we also recognize that progress along the way is worth celebrating and worth fostering. We want to, two other things that we recommend. One is to really focus on parents' persistence in our case in education, or the other aspects of the parent work. I think we all know that most parents are inclined to say, well, my child before this. And so we work in our intake and working on a family needs assessment with parents who are coming to Education Alliance or BMCC for Education to say, what are you going to do when your child is sick but you still have class? What's your plan A? What's your plan B? To really help parents see the importance of their sticking to their goals as how that is investing in their children, not denying their children something. And like PICA, we've added child care at the time of adult education for those kids who are not in our Head Start program. And finally, it's really worth investing in a database that's going to enable you to connect the child outcomes and the parent outcomes, which we are now doing with Promise in our first full year, and are very excited about the potential to link data on parent education with teaching strategies goal data about child education.
Wonderful, thank you. So I just want to ask you one question, Lynn, before we get into the group questions, which is, you talked about the task force, which seems like something that a lot of communities could take on depending on who their stakeholders are. What stakeholder groups would you say are really important to think about including for that?
So I would say, and Karen may add, for us, it was very important to have somebody from our board, so that there was endorsement at the board level of this as a priority. All of our partners, so NYU and BMCC and others, I'd say the thing we have not done as well as we would have liked, and it's hard to go back in time on this, but we keep trying, is two. One, we tried to get Head Start involvement, and they were not able to come regularly. And two, we try to have parent involvement, and that also has proven a little complicated. Parents are very active in our policy council and on our program committee of our board, but it hasn't really worked in this task force. I should also say that Ascend is a member of the task force.
Mm-hmm. And you said, when you said Head Start, you mean the Office of Head Start?
Yep.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And so I just want to do a quick announcement before we get to questions and answers. What you'll see on your screen right now are the 5 other webinars that will be part of this series. We'd love to have you all join us. We're also, if you're here for the NHSA annual conference, on Monday afternoon, I can't remember exactly what time, but Monday afternoon we'll be having a meetup, which is for our Learning Network, but also anyone else who's interested, and really hope that some of you can join us in person for that conversation. And if you haven't been part of one of NHSA's Learning Networks before, they are listservs for NHSA members on a variety of topics. We've got one for home visitors and home visiting managers. We've got one for human HR, one for fiscal, one for new directors, and we're excited to launch this one for program staff who are interested in 2Gen efforts. So by all means, feel free to email me if you'd like to join that group. Also, you're able to watch the recorded Institute sessions and webinars. And if you'd like slides from today, you're welcome to email me for that as well. So we do have a few minutes for questions. You've got the question box on the right side of your screen. I think a lot of hands were up from before when we did the Can You Hear Me activity. So I'm putting everyone's hands down. But if you want to go ahead and raise your hand or type in a question, we're happy to take them. And I'll ask one while you're all typing. To both programs, what kinds of tools do you use or questions do you ask to try to understand which families are ready for different opportunities?
Oh, as part of our intake process, this is Karen Berry from the Ed Alliance. As part of our intake process, we have our family workers trained on all of the details of the 2-generation program. Each family writes a family plan discussing how they want to develop, and what we do is introduce them to different pieces of the College Access and Success program that can support their personal goals. Okay, so we gather information at intake. We recently developed a survey that each family will take in addition to the family service plan that they develop, which will give us indicators of what skill sets their parents need to build.
Mm-hmm. And we do that as well. We do an individual family partnership agreement with parents and ask them what they're interested in, and it's really important for our advocates to follow up and to check with them periodically to see where they're at. Because in the beginning of the year, sometimes they really haven't really ever thought about what kind of goals they wanted, and so it takes ongoing partnership with our parent-child advocates and teachers as well. On home visits, they can do some follow-up conversation with parents.
And how frequently do you meet with parents? We do at least quarterly. How about you for the family partnership agreement follow-up?
Well, they set those goals about when the parent wants to be contacted again, so it varies depending upon where the family is at. So if a family is already in school, there might be just a check-in, but they'll give us some dates for follow-up.
Thank you.
Great. I'm still waiting on some questions. One that came in was, could you talk a little bit more about the database piece? And I know that that's actually something we're going to later be talking a little bit about on one of the other webinars, but for Lynn and Karen, do you want to share a little bit about how you approach that or what you wanted to make sure to include?
Yeah, database.
I know you guys are still new at this too.
Yes.
I mean, I think for us, the framework was we knew what we wanted the database to be able to do, right? Like we knew we wanted to be able to look at a parent's experience and connect it to a child's results, or look at a child's experience and connect it to a parent's result. And knowing what we wanted the end of the story to be, how we wanted to use the data, has been the most helpful in finding a database. We're using Promise, and so far are very pleased with it, but we don't have a full year of experience yet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's an area that PICA needs to work on. We do have an excellent database that we've created on our own, but a way to align the information that we gather about parents to align it with their child to see if that increases outcomes for children. And we've, have been working on that this year. How are we going to align all that information? Because we collect it all, it's just getting it to come out in reports to give us information.
Right. All right. Do you all have any questions for each other or any final remarks? And that's to Rachel and everyone as well.
Not at this time for me.
No.
Rachel, did you want to add anything else?
I'm good.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much to all of you for presenting today. And to all of you on the line, we hope that you'll continue to join us in this conversation moving forward. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.
Emily.
Bye.
Bye.
Right.
We should qualify.
Yeah.